I will never forget the endless summers at our family lake house. That weathered cabin on Silver Lake was more than wood and stone. It held our childhood in its walls. When our parents died 6 months ago, their will left the property to both my brother Jackson and me. I thought we would honor their memory together. Then Jackson dropped the bomb. He wanted the house all to himself because, as he put it, I already had a family and a home while he was single and deserved it more. If you are watching this right now, please hit that like button, subscribe, and let me know in the comments where you are watching from as I share how this family drama unfolded. Our vacation home sits on the eastern shore of Silver Lake, a jewel nestled in the pines 3 hours from the city. The two-story cabin with its wide wraparound porch and dock stretching into crystal-clear waters was built by my grandparents in 1972. They purchased the land when it was nothing but wilderness, constructing the house board by board with the help of local craftsmen. The interior boasts original hardwood floors, a stone fireplace that reaches to the ceiling, and windows that frame the lake like living paintings. That house represents 50 years of family memories. Every summer from when I was 4 until I left for college, we spent July and August there. I learned to swim off that dock, caught my first fish from the rowboat with Dad, and carved my initials in the old oak tree behind the shed. Jackson and I would race each other through the forest paths, build elaborate sandcastles on the shore, and stay up telling ghost stories in our bunk beds. At night, the whole family would gather around the fireplace, roasting marshmallows and playing card games, while thunder rumbled over the lake. Our parents maintained family traditions religiously. Dad would host epic 4th of July barbecues where neighbors from all around the lake would gather. Mom would organize annual treasure hunts that grew more elaborate as we aged. Every August, we would lie on the dock, watching meteor showers, making wishes on shooting stars. The house collected these moments, year after year, becoming a living museum of our childhood. I am now 35, working as a software engineer for a tech company in Chicago. My wife Sophia and I have been married for 9 years, and we have 2 wonderful children, Emma 7 and Liam 5. We live in a comfortable 3-bedroom house in a good school district, and while we are not wealthy, we live comfortably. I have always made it a priority to bring my family to the lake house for at least 2 weeks every summer, wanting my children to experience the magic that shaped my own childhood. Jackson, my older brother by 3 years, took a different path. He pursued a career in investment banking in New York, climbing the corporate ladder with single-minded determination. He lives in a luxury apartment in Manhattan, drives an imported sports car, and wears suits that cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. While successful by conventional standards, his personal life revolves around work, casual relationships, and maintaining his social status among Wall Street peers. Our relationship has always been complicated. Jackson was the golden child growing up, excelling in academics and sports with seemingly effortless grace. Our parents never explicitly favored him, but his achievements naturally garnered more attention. I found myself constantly in his shadow, developing a pattern of concession that followed us into adulthood. When we argued, I typically gave in for the sake of peace. When we both wanted something, I would step aside. This dynamic became so ingrained that neither of us questioned it. 6 months ago, our world shattered when our parents died in a car accident on their way home from a dinner with friends. A drunk driver crossed the center line, hitting them head-on. They died instantly. The shock and grief overwhelmed us, temporarily bridging the distance that had grown between Jackson and me. We stood side by side at the funeral, accepting condolences and supporting each other through the unbearable loss. After the initial shock subsided, we met with our parents' attorney, David Thompson, to discuss the will. Most of their assets were straightforward, with specific bequests to various relatives and charities. The vacation home, however, was left jointly to Jackson and me. The will expressed our parents' hope that we would continue to use it as a gathering place, keeping family traditions alive for the next generation. Neither of us questioned this arrangement initially, both still processing our grief. Little did I know that this shared inheritance would soon drive a wedge between us deeper than ever before. The reading of the will took place in David Thompson's office, a wood-paneled room with law books lining the walls and certificates of achievement hanging in neat rows. Jackson and I sat in leather chairs across from David's imposing mahogany desk, both dressed in somber suits that still carried the weight of the funeral. David, a family friend who had handled our parents' legal affairs for decades, adjusted his reading glasses and reviewed the documents with practiced solemnity. Everything proceeded smoothly until we reached the section about the lake house. David explained that it would be jointly owned with equal responsibility for taxes and maintenance. I nodded in agreement, finding comfort in this arrangement that honored our shared history. Jackson, however, shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his expression darkening with each word. After David finished reading, Jackson cleared his throat. I can still see the cold calculation in his eyes as he spoke. "I think we need to discuss the practicalities of the lake house situation," he said, his voice taking on the sharp edge I recognized from his business negotiations. "It makes more sense for me to take full ownership." David and I stared at him in surprise. David removed his glasses, his legal formality momentarily forgotten. "Your parents were quite clear about joint ownership, Jackson." Jackson leaned forward, fingers steepled in front of him. "I understand, but there are several factors to consider. First, I am the firstborn son. In most traditional arrangements, the elder son would inherit the family property. That had nothing to do with our parents' wishes, and David said as much, but Jackson continued as if neither of us had spoken. Second, Michael already has a house and a family. He has established his own home in Chicago. I am single. I need a place that belongs to me somewhere. I can retreat from the city. The lake house would give me that." I felt my throat tighten. "You are saying you deserve it more because you have not started a family." Jackson waved dismissively. "I am saying I would use it more. You visit for what, 2 weeks a year? The house sits empty the rest of the time. I plan to use it regularly for weekends and working remotely." His next point cut deeper. "Besides, I earn considerably more than you do. The property taxes and maintenance costs are significant. I am in a better financial position to preserve the property." I could not believe what I was hearing. I felt blindsided, betrayed. The lake house was never about money to me. It was our shared heritage, a connection to our parents and our past. The thought of my children being denied the summers I had cherished made my stomach twist. "You know that is not what Mom and Dad wanted," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. Jackson scoffed. "They did not anticipate this situation. They expected us to remain close and make decisions together, but our lives have gone in different directions." He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a document, sliding it across the table. "Look, I am willing to buy you out. I have drafted an offer, 20% below market value. It is fair considering you would not need to deal with any of the hassle of selling." I did not even look at the paper. The lake house was not for sale, especially not at a discount to my own brother. Our parents had been gone only 6 months, and he was already dismantling their wishes for financial gain. What followed was the worst argument we had ever had. Jackson accused me of neglecting our parents in their final years, conveniently forgetting how rarely he visited them despite living closer. I countered by pointing out how he had paraded girlfriends through their lives, never bringing the same woman home twice while they had hoped to see him settle down. David attempted to mediate, but our anger had been building for years beneath a veneer of civility. "You never appreciated what you had," Jackson spat. "You took everything for granted while I worked for everything in my life." "That is rich coming from you," I replied. "Name one family holiday you did not arrive late and leave early in the past 5 years. Name one time you helped with maintenance on the lake house instead of just enjoying it." The argument ended with Jackson threatening legal action if I refused to sell. "That legal battle will cost you more than what you would gain," he warned. "You should take the offer while it stands." When I told Sophia about Jackson's ultimatum that night, I expected her to suggest we take the money for our children's future. Instead, she surprised me with her conviction. "That house is your heritage, McCall," she said firmly. "It is Emma and Liam's connection to their grandparents. No amount of money can replace those summer memories you talk about. We can afford our share of the taxes. We will find a way." Our cousin Amanda tried to intervene, inviting both of us to dinner at her home to discuss the situation calmly. The evening began pleasantly enough with reminiscences about our parents and shared childhood moments. But when the topic turned to the lake house, Jackson's mask of civility slipped. "McCall is being unreasonable," he told Amanda. "He is clinging to sentimentality when we should be practical. I am offering him good money to walk away." "Your definition of good money is insulting," I countered. The conversation devolved from there, with Amanda eventually giving up her peacemaking efforts. Jackson left abruptly, slamming the door behind him. What I did not know then was that Jackson had already begun a campaign to turn our extended family against me. He called aunts, uncles, and cousins, presenting a twisted version of events. According to him, I was the greedy one, refusing to honor our parents' memory by causing division. He painted himself as the responsible brother, trying to preserve the family property while I was willing to let it decay through neglect. The calls started coming in. First, our Aunt Patricia, who had always favored Jackson, expressing disappointment in my stubbornness. Then Uncle Robert suggesting I think of the family harmony. Even our childhood friend Tyler, who had spent many summers with us at the lake, questioning why I would not compromise. With each conversation, I felt more isolated and doubted myself more. Was I being unreasonable? Should I just take the money and walk away? The pressure built until I felt constantly anxious, losing sleep, and snapping at Sophia and the children over minor issues. The lake house, once a source of my happiest memories, had become a dark cloud hanging over our lives. Early spring arrived, and Sophia suggested we take the children to the lake house for a weekend. Emma had been asking about it, wanting to see where her grandparents had spent their summers. Despite my reluctance to face the physical reminder of our ongoing conflict, I agreed. I called Jackson to inform him of our plans, leaving a voicemail when he did not answer. He never returned my call, which I took as tacit acknowledgement. We packed the car on Friday morning, filling it with groceries, games, and fishing gear for Liam's first attempt at catching a bass like I had at his age. The drive was filled with stories, as I pointed out landmarks along the way and recounted adventures from my childhood. Emma and Liam buzzed with excitement in the back seat, while Sophia squeezed my hand, silently acknowledging the emotional weight of this visit. As we turned onto the gravel road leading to the property, my stomach knotted. Something felt wrong. When the house came into view, I noticed an unfamiliar luxury SUV parked in the driveway. My first thought was that Jackson had decided to use the house the same weekend, despite my message. I parked beside the SUV, and we approached the front door. I inserted my key into the lock, but it would not turn. Confused, I tried again, jiggling the key and applying more pressure. Nothing. Just then, the door swung open, revealing Jackson in casual clothes, a glass of scotch in hand. I noticed immediately that the entryway behind him looked different. The family photos that had hung on the wall were gone, replaced by modern abstract artwork. "What are you doing here?" he asked, coldly blocking the entrance. I called and left a message that we were coming this weekend. I explained, growing increasingly uneasy. "I changed the locks last month," he replied with a dismissive shrug. "For security purposes." I was stunned. Without consulting me, we are supposed to make decisions together. Jackson took a slow sip from his glass, eyeing my family with thinly veiled disdain. "I have been using the house regularly. It made sense to upgrade the security." I looked past him, noticing boxes stacked in the living room and new furniture where our parents' old couch had been. "You have been moving your things in?" I asked, my voice rising. He straightened, adopting the stance he used when asserting dominance in business situations. I spoke with my attorney. "As a co-owner, I have every right to occupy the property without discussing it with me first. You made your position clear," he replied. "You refused a reasonable offer. I decided to exercise my rights as co-owner." His gaze shifted to Sophia, who stood protectively near Emma and Liam. My brother had never approved of my marriage, considering Sophia beneath our social standing because she worked as a public school teacher. "I suppose this was her idea, coming here unannounced, trying to stake some claim," he said with a sneer. "Do not bring my wife into this," I warned, feeling my temper rising. "She has always been jealous of what our family has." Jackson continued, his voice deliberately loud enough for Sophia to hear. "Pushing you to claim what you never cared about until now. Greedy, if you ask me." Sophia stepped forward, her face flushed. "We never asked for anything except to share what Michael and Emma's parents intended for both of you," she said firmly. Jackson laughed dismissively. Right. Just looking out for family values while eyeing the property value. Emma tugged at my hand. Daddy, why is Uncle Jackson being mean? She whispered, her eyes wide with confusion. Jackson noticed her distress but showed no remorse. Instead, he stepped forward, blocking the doorway more completely. Look, you cannot stay here. I have guests coming tomorrow. You cannot just lock us out, I protested. My name is on the deed too. His expression hardened. I will call the police if you do not leave. Trespassing is a serious offense. Liam began to cry, frightened by the escalating tension. Emma hugged him protectively, looking up at me with concern. I felt trapped and humiliated, standing outside what should have been my own family home, my children witnessing this ugly display of adult conflict. For their sake, I backed down. Fine, we are leaving. But this is not over, Jackson. His smirk followed us as we returned to the car. As I strapped the children in trying to explain away the situation with forced cheerfulness about finding a nice hotel with a pool, instead I saw Jackson watching from the porch, victory written across his face. That night, in a modest lakeside motel after the children were finally asleep, Sophia held me as I struggled with feelings of failure and helplessness. We need to find another way, she whispered. This is not just about a house anymore. It is about standing up to a bully. The next morning, hoping to salvage something from our ruined weekend, we visited the local ice cream shop that had been a childhood favorite. There we ran into Mrs. Henderson, our former neighbor at the lake, who expressed delight at seeing us. When I mentioned we had not been able to stay at the family house, her expression turned confused. That's odd, she said. Your brother has been showing some business people around the property, men in suits taking photos and measurements. Not the usual weekend guests. This new information gnawed at me all weekend. Why would Jackson need businessmen to tour our family home? What was he planning? After returning to Chicago, I decided to sort through some boxes of our parents' personal effects that I had stored in our basement. Among photo albums and holiday cards, I found a small wooden box containing personal letters. Inside was an envelope addressed to both Jackson and me in our mother's handwriting, dated just a month before her death. With trembling hands, I opened it and began to read my darling sons. If you are reading this, it means your father and I are no longer with you. There is so much I wish I could say in person, but this letter will have to suffice. The lake house has always been the heart of our family. Your father and I have watched you both grow there summer after summer, and nothing has given us more joy than seeing you build the same memories with your own children, Michal. I know that you both love the house in your own ways, but I also know my sons. Jackson, you have always seen value in terms of assets and investments. Michal, you see it in moments and memories. I fear this difference might cause conflict between you when we are gone. What David may not have explained yet is that we have established a trust specifically for the lake house. There are sufficient funds to cover maintenance and taxes for at least 20 years. We did this to ensure that financial concerns would never force either of you to sell your birthright. More importantly, we added a clause to the deed that requires mutual consent for any sale. Neither of you can sell without the other's approval. This was not done out of lack of trust, but to ensure you would work together as brothers should. My greatest wish is that the lake house remains a gathering place for our family for generations to come. A place where your children and their children after them can continue to build the memories that have made our family strong. All my love, Mom. My hands shook as I finished reading. Not only had Jackson been misleading me about his financial concerns, but he had deliberately concealed the existence of the trust fund. What else was he hiding? The answer came the next day when I received an email meant for Jackson that had been sent to our shared family email account, which I still occasionally checked. The message was from someone named Gregory Patterson at Blue Lake Resort Development, referencing recent discussions about the Silver Lake property and containing an attached preliminary offer. I opened the attachment, my blood running cold as I read. Jackson had been in negotiations to sell our family home to a resort developer. The company planned to demolish the house and build luxury vacation condos. The figure at the bottom of the offer was substantial, many times what Jackson had offered to buy me out for. I called Jackson immediately, my hands shaking with rage. "I know what you are doing," I said when he answered. Blue Lake Resort, you are planning to sell the house to developers. A long pause followed. So what if I am? Jackson finally replied, his tone defiant. It is a business decision. That old house is worth far more as land than as a structure. How could you? I demanded. That house is our heritage, our family history. You cannot just erase it for a profit. Do not be so sentimental, Jackson scoffed. It is just wood and stone. The real value is in the lakefront location. We could both make a significant profit. I do not want profit, I shouted. I want my children to have the same summers we had. I want them to know where their grandparents spent their happiest days. You are living in a fantasy world, Michael. Always have been. This is why I am the successful one. I see opportunities where you see photo albums and ghost stories. His words stung, but they also clarified everything. This had never been about Jackson needing the house because he was single. It had never been about preserving family property. It had always been about money. The brother I thought I knew, despite his flaws, would never have destroyed our family home for profit. Perhaps I had never really known him at all. After discovering Jackson's true intentions, I knew I needed a strategic approach rather than emotional confrontation. Sophia and I spent the evening mapping out a plan. First, I contacted David Thompson to inquire about the trust my mother had mentioned in her letter. David was surprised I did not know about it. Jackson assured me he had discussed it with you months ago, he said, sounding troubled. The trust contains approximately $350,000 specifically for lake house maintenance taxes and necessary renovations. Your parents were quite thorough in their planning. Next, I asked about the clause requiring mutual consent for any sale. Yes, that provision is binding, David confirmed. Neither of you can sell without the other's signature. If Jackson has been negotiating a sale, he cannot complete it without your approval. Armed with this knowledge, I gathered every piece of evidence. The email from the resort developer, screenshots of the offer, my mother's letter, and documentation of the trust. I made copies of everything, creating a comprehensive file that could not be dismissed or explained away. The following weekend, I arranged a family meeting at my Aunt Patricia's house. I invited all the relatives Jackson had previously contacted to turn against me. I also asked David Thompson to attend in a professional capacity. Jackson's face when he walked in and saw everyone gathered was a mixture of confusion and suspicion. "What is this about?" he demanded, as he reluctantly took a seat. "I have discovered some information that affects our entire family," I began calmly. I then methodically presented the evidence, explaining how Jackson had concealed the trust fund, lied about his financial concerns, and secretly planned to sell our family home to developers. The room fell silent as I passed around copies of the resort offer. Aunt Patricia gasped when she saw the plans for condominiums where our family house stood. Uncle Robert removed his glasses, wiping them vigorously, as he often did when upset. "Is this true, Jackson?" Amanda asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jackson looked cornered. His confident facade cracked as he realized the extent of what I had uncovered. "It is a preliminary discussion," he said defensively. "Nothing has been decided." "You told me Mickle was the one threatening our family legacy," Aunt Patricia said, her voice thick with disappointment. "You said he wanted to sell for the money." Jackson attempted to recover, straightening his posture and adopting his business tone. "The property is significantly underutilized. The maintenance costs are increasing every year. This would be a smart financial decision for everyone." David Thompson cleared his throat. "I feel obligated to point out that Frank and Eleanor established a trust specifically to address those concerns. The house can be maintained for decades without financial strain on either of you. And even if Jackson wanted to sell, he cannot do so without my consent," I added, "just as I cannot sell without his. Our parents ensured we would have to work together." Our relatives exchanged glances, the full picture finally coming into focus. The narrative Jackson had created about me being unreasonable and greedy collapsed under the weight of evidence. As the initial shock subsided, I presented my proposal. "I believe we can honor our parents' wishes while finding a compromise. I suggest we keep the lake house in the family, using the trust for maintenance and establishing a fair schedule for its use. I outlined a plan where Jackson and I would each have allocated weeks throughout the year with additional time set aside for family gatherings. We would form a small committee of family members to oversee any major decisions about the property, ensuring transparency and fairness. I also suggested we continue the tradition of a family reunion each summer, creating new memories while honoring old ones. The house would remain a central gathering place as our parents had intended. My proposal was met with nodding heads and murmurs of approval. Even Jackson remained silent, unable to argue against a plan that was both practical and respectful of our parents' wishes. After the meeting, Jackson left quickly, avoiding conversation with anyone. In the weeks that followed, he did not return my calls or emails. I worried he might still try to fight me legally, but David assured me my position was secure. A month passed before I heard from Jackson. He requested we meet at a neutral location, a coffee shop halfway between our homes. When I arrived, I barely recognized him. The slick, confident businessman was gone, replaced by someone who looked tired and oddly vulnerable. "You won," he said as I sat down. "But I need you to understand something. I never intended to hurt the family. I genuinely believe the property would be better served by development. The past is the past. We cannot live in it forever." I studied my brother, seeing beyond his words to the insecurity beneath. It is not about winning Jackson. It is about preserving what matters, and maybe creating something new together. Our conversation was awkward but civil. We agreed to try my proposed arrangement for 1 year, after which we would reassess. Jackson admitted he rarely used the lake house anyway, preferring luxury resorts for his limited vacation time. 1 year later, we held our first official family reunion at the lake house. The weather cooperated beautifully, providing 3 days of sunshine for swimming, boating, and outdoor meals. Emma and Liam raced around with their cousins, creating the same kind of childhood memories I had treasured. To everyone's surprise, Jackson attended for the entire weekend, rather than making a brief appearance. He seemed uncomfortable at first, out of place in the casual setting, but by the second day, something had shifted. I found him teaching Liam how to cast a fishing line off the dock, displaying a patience I had not seen since we were boys. That evening, as the sun set over the lake, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Jackson joined me on the porch. We sat in silence for a while, nursing cold beers and watching the children play a game of tag on the lawn. "I was wrong about this place," he finally said, his voice uncharacteristically soft. "I forgot what it felt like to just be here. No deadlines, no deals, just family." I nodded, allowing him the space to continue. "I have been thinking a lot about Mom and Dad, about what they built here. It was never about the property value." His voice caught slightly. "It was about creating a place where we would always come back to each other." The simple admission represented a profound shift in my brother. In acknowledging the true value of our shared inheritance, he had taken the first step toward healing our relationship. Over the next few years, Jackson gradually changed. He visited the lake house more frequently, sometimes bringing colleagues or dates, other times coming alone to work remotely or simply disconnect from city life. He developed a genuine bond with Emma and Liam, becoming the uncle they deserved rather than the distant figure he had been. The journey was not always smooth. We still disagreed, sometimes heatedly, about decisions regarding the property, but we found a way to listen to each other, to compromise, and to keep our parents' vision alive. Looking back, I realized that what seemed like a battle over property was really about something much deeper. It was about honoring the past while creating space for the future, about recognizing that family legacy is not measured in square footage or market value, but in the connections we nurture and the traditions we maintain. If you have ever faced a similar situation with family property or inheritance disputes, I would love to hear your story in the comments below. How did you resolve it? What advice would you give others facing similar challenges? Please like this video if you found my story helpful. Subscribe to hear more real-life experiences and share with someone who might be struggling with family conflicts. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the greatest inheritance is not what we receive, but what we choose to preserve and pass on.